Welcome to What's the Story Dublin, the official Dublin City Council podcast with me, your host, Deirdre Malumbi. This podcast deep dives into the work of all the moving parts that make up Dublin City Council. It also shares news of the Council's latest initiatives and exciting events. In today's episode, we're looking at integration support and the LAIT. I am delighted to be joined today by Reuben Hambakachere, whose role at Dublin City Council is Integration Support Coordinator. Reuben, you are very welcome to the What's the Story Dublin podcast.
Thanks, Dara. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you so much. Reuben, we always begin our podcast by asking, can you tell us first a bit about the career path that led you to your current role at Dublin City Council?
Yeah, thank you. My career path actually began from a personal level. I came into Ireland a couple of years ago as a refugee, and when I arrived, I went through the asylum process. And while I was in that process, I began to volunteer and to provide support to other refugees who were in the center that I was living in. And then I ended up joining a board of a community organization in Navan as a board member, and I got interested in the work. So I was someone who was normally in business. It wasn't community development and anything that I was doing, but it was business. It was a business career path that I'd chosen before I came to Ireland. So when I found myself with that personal experience of going through the international protection process, I decided that I wanted to do something to give back to my own community. So in that, I went and joined the board, and then I also volunteered with the Irish Refugee Council as a receptionist, and I began to meet a lot of people from a lot of nationalities, and also working with the legal services within the Irish Refugee Council. So I took up an interest in just how the work was being done there. And then I went into a community development course, which I completed in Maynooth. And after that, I decided that I just wanted to do community and youth work. And I worked in a community organization in Navan for 12 years. Before I joined Meath County Council as an integration support worker. So I was with Meath County Council for a year, and then there was a vacancy for a coordinator in Dublin City Council, and that's how I ended up where I am today.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. And it's so incredible that it sounds like you had a fairly consistent career path and fairly kind of consistent interest that you wanted to kind of keep going on and explore throughout your career. Yeah,
really. I found that I like to provide individual support to people who were in any situation that I came across. And through the course that I did, I found ways of actually articulating the issues and also challenging injustices. So that helped me as well to find a footing in community development and also inform policy from a lived experience. So I really enjoyed doing that. And I just said, well, if there is ever an opportunity for me to work as a civil servant, I would go for it. So I tried many times to get into civil service in the Department of Justice. I couldn't get in. And then when the one came up in the local authority, I decided to go for this support worker role in County Meath, and I got that. And then I went on to become a coordinator with Dublin City Council. Yeah,
because I feel like a lot of people might kind of, look at the title of your role, Integration Support Coordinator, and not actually realise the full extent of everything that it involves. So can you tell us maybe a little bit, kind of give us the context or the background behind your role as it pertains to, Ireland's international protection system and the Irish Refugee Protection Programme, so that people can understand a bit more about what it involves?
Yeah, so the role is part of a government commitment to develop a comprehensive new model for people who are seeking international protection. So it came by from the recommendations that were made in the Catherine Day report when there was the white paper to end direct provision. So at that time, they decided to set up integration support services in all 31 local authorities. So that was decided a couple of years ago. It took time before the teams were set in place. So the first team that was put in place was in Meath County Council, and I was part of that initial team that was set up before all the other local authorities rolled out the teams. So the goal really and the aim is to expand the existing integration model, which is there to support people who are coming to seek protection, and establish a permanent local integration system in all the local authorities that is the same nationally. So before, there were different supports that were available in all the areas across the country. But now what the government has decided to do is to have something that is standard. Whatever service we're providing in Dublin City will be the same in Leitrim. It will be the same in Donegal to provide support for the people who are seeking protection. And the role's primary focus is to provide ongoing integration supports for people who are here seeking international protection.
And is this a fairly new development? Like around what year would this kind of initiative have started?
It would have started in 2023.
Okay.
Yeah, and then but on Dublin City was the last one off the traps. So we only got set up this year in January. So we are only a year on the job.
Yeah. But a lot has happened in that year, I can imagine.
Yeah, a lot has happened. Yeah, so there's been a lot of change of policy within the integration system itself, and then also we can see what is happening, especially in the public, what is happening in the communities and all that division that is happening. So we have been working in that kind of hostile environment, but we are meant to provide a service to the people who are seeking protection as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And your role actually falls under kind of the Local Authority Integration Team, or LAIT for short. Can you explain to the listeners what do they do and what would be their goals?
So the Local Authority Integration Teams, in short, LAIT, we work with the guiding principle integration from day one, so providing support for people that have come to seek protection. So primarily we'll be working with people who are living in the IPAS centers and also the beneficiaries of temporary protection living in the accommodation that is provided by the state. We would go in there and provide support to them, signposting them to mainstream services.
Brilliant. And you mentioned there actually a couple of times about like principles. So are there particular policies that would guide your work and determine it?
Yes. So the principles that we use and the policies that we use is the international protection process policy, and that is under the Immigration Act of 2016. So that's going to be changing next year because they're actually working on a new Immigration Act at the moment. So that is going to be changing at some time next year. But that's what we really use. And also the integration strategy for the country. At the moment, we don't have an integration strategy. So we're really working on what has been set out in the previous strategy, which ended last year.
And are there particular kind of changes that you guys would be expecting as part of the strategy, or is it more just an expansion of what already exists?
It will be more of an expansion of what already exists. Yeah, that's as far as we know up to now. I don't think there'll be anything that'll be so different from it.
Okay, great. What does a day in your role look like, Reuben? It's probably not ever a typical day, but just generally, what kind of work would you do on a day-by-day basis? And
we'll meet with our partners, so we'll be working with any organizations or statutory bodies that are providing support for people who are seeking protection. So it's either coordinating clinics where we go to the centers. So I have 2 support workers in the team and a grade 4 admin worker who goes out and supports them as well when they go to the clinics, and in that they will be providing one-to-one support for people that are living in the centers, and also sometimes if it's a general issue, for example, if it's education or employment, they'll have an information session because it pertains to everyone who is living in the center. But if it's a particular issue for an individual, they'll meet one-on-one and then provide support. And then I'll be coordinating all that service delivery for the people who are seeking protection. And then we also have a lot of dealings with the statutory bodies, like the guys who are providing accommodation, the International Protection Applicants Accommodation Service, IPAS. They'll be the ones that we'll be linking in with, and any other government department really that is working directly with the people who are seeking protection.
Yeah, because that's actually another question I was going to ask you about, was who would be the bodies that you primarily work with. So it does sound like it's kind of a stretch across the board between the government agencies, the organisations and the communities, those who are on the ground as well. Yes,
and also the civil service, the community development organisations, or the partnerships, the area partnerships, and also the area of offices, community development workers. We link in with those in all the 5 administrative areas. We would link in also with Kola and Nog, because we work with young people also in the centres. So just to engage them at a community level, we signpost them to Kola to be supported for any community engagement that they'd like.
Would there be any groups that you kind of primarily work with or primarily target?
Yeah, so we'll be looking at, for legal services, we'll be looking at the Irish Refugee Council. They provide that. And then for community engagement, there is a group called Akidwa. They provide tailored services for women that are seeking protection. And then there's another one called Amal. They provide cultural sensitive services for the Muslim community. So those are the groups that we really link in with, and any other that provides support for people that are seeking protection.
Brilliant, amazing. It just sounds like very kind of fulfilling and important work that you do. Do you find that there's kind of does the work get quite emotional and stuff? I can imagine that might be maybe some of the challenges, or is it more to do with policy and kind of?
No, it's really, it's like a really. At times it gets very emotional because you're looking at real life situations. People have come here to seek protection and they're hoping for the best outcome in their cases. And sometimes they're going through the legal part of the process, but there's still the personal, individual life that they have to live while they're waiting for a decision to be made on the case. And that really can affect them. And from time to time, you can go to a center and someone will be coming to you so many times because they're thinking that you might be able to help with that part, which we can't. We wait for the process to take course, but they'll come to you and say, do you know anything that is happening with my case? But it's something that we cannot influence or we cannot do anything about. And it's just to say to them, you have to wait for the process because the process can be very lengthy. So people have to wait. And sometimes that can really cause that burnout. And people want to move out of the centers or they want to find something else to do because they don't know how long they're going to be in limbo.
Yeah. What are some of the other challenges that you find in your work?
I think there are systematic barriers that we find in the work, that there are parts of our work where we know what is set out for us to do. And then there are other areas where people will not, they do not qualify for those things that they want. And they would come to us and then there's a block there because we cannot go above whatever is not applicable for them while they are applying for the process. But they don't realize that it's not us causing the block. We are only trying to move them along through the process, but at times that doesn't work the way they would expect. So it's really, and then also addressing that uncertainty when people are going through that process. It's not certain whether they're going to stay in the country or not. They might be deported or they might stay in the country. So just how do we manage that uncertainty? And then also making sure that we utilize all the skill of the people that are coming here, because a lot of migrants that have arrived here have come with skills, but it's how do we harness that human capital, human social capital, and bring that skill to the realization of other units that we work with, that actually these people can contribute to society. So that can be very challenging, communicating that, and then also tackling the racism and xenophobia at the moment. It's a very difficult environment we're working in, because at one point we are modeling hope for the people that we work with, and then at the other end there is a pushback from the community, and how to communicate that and create social cohesion is very difficult, especially nowadays. People don't want to even have the conversation. They don't know who to trust to have that conversation. So we are really walking on a tight wire, I would say, where you at times you'll be like, am I trusting enough to have the conversation with the person before me, or would that person turn on me when I bring out what I do? So it's really challenging for us even to communicate our work, but we have to model out that hope and continue doing the work that we do, because people are looking at us as the ones that are going to be delivering for people who are seeking international protection.
Absolutely, because that was one of the other things I was going to touch on, Reuben. Our podcast here, What's the Story Dublin, it is all about kind of, explaining the services and the different departments and units of Dublin City Council in a very kind of, accessible way. And I'd imagine that is one of the challenges with your work. It's explaining exactly what your team does and what you do as an individual, so that there's that understanding there, Yeah,
because people really want to access services. That's one of the things they do. And the City Council provides a lot of services. And some of these services, people don't qualify for them while they're going through the process. It's how we communicate that to people. And also how we communicate that to the wider public, that not everything that they are hearing out there is the right information. Not everyone is coming to Ireland and getting a house on the first day that they arrive in Ireland. So we have to promote that positive work that we do with the people in the protection process, and also help the integration process, because it's a two-way process. It's for the people that are arriving in the country and also for the wider community. How do we bring the two groups together to make sure that they're getting the right information, that not everyone is coming here and getting all the services within the county council, but they're also getting a certain service from my department, the LAIT, but they might not be able to qualify for housing, because by law they do not qualify for housing. They can only live in the centres and in the accommodation that they're being provided for while their case is being resolved.
And in what way can applicants and even like members of the community who are interested in finding out more kind of access that information? Would you guys have a website? Is it better to email direct? Would you host kind of workshops and different things like that?
So there are organizations that we work with. So we have convened a community integration forum where we have community organization and statutory bodies, about 20 of them, and we meet to discuss some of the issues that we've just described here, and some of them actually provide that information.
Great.
So for example, the Irish Refugee Council, the Migrants' Rights Centre would have that, the Immigrant Council of Ireland would have that, Crosscare would have that, Jesuit Refugees would have all that information. And just to dispel all and debunk all the myths about people seeking protection, that information is actually there in the public domain, but people choose to go for the information that they get on social media platforms and they feed off that. But if you want to get the right information, it's there, even on government websites. The right information is there. If you want to know what asylum seekers are entitled to, if you just put it into Google, it will come out on a government website what they are entitled to. But people tend to feed off on social media. Yeah.
That's great to know the resources are there. Just go to the right places.
Yes, exactly.
What have been some of the most fulfilling aspects of your work, Reuben?
For me, I think building that independence is really something that is core to my satisfaction. When I see people building the independence for themselves and they're equipped to live independently, because they don't want, people come here with hope to live and to thrive in Ireland. And I enjoy the moment when I see that someone is able to live independently, and also empowering them so that they can decide how they navigate the complex systems of the Irish system. And I know it's difficult for Irish people. It's more difficult for someone else who didn't have an Irish education or an upbringing to navigate those complex systems like job applications, even learning the language, learning English or learning Irish if they're interested in that. So that those moments for me when I see people learning English when they've arrived in the country with no or little English at all, and they are able to string a few sentences after our intervention with English classes, I'm delighted by those small moments for them, because I know they're actually just creating more and more incremental moments for them to be thriving because they've been empowered, and then also fostering a community, a connected community, because that's one of the things that we want to see, that we foster a connected community. The work we do should not be independent to the people that are seeking protection, but how do we link in and create opportunities and conditions to link in with the wider community and bring them into what we are doing, so that we create that trust between communities and we get the right information out, so that people don't think that whoever is coming to seek protection in Ireland is coming to take away from them, but is coming to add to the community as well.
Absolutely. I love all that, Reuben. Wow, you're so inspirational. I suppose we could end our podcast, because we are coming to time, unfortunately. But what are your hopes for the future of your work and that of your team?
The hopes that I have for my team really, I want to see the work that we do embedded across all the systems of the council. So it's not only the work that I do should be linked in with communications, it should be linked in with housing, it should be linked in with planning, to see what is happening within the county, within the city council, what is happening for people. And once we have that embedded and people know the service that we provide, they can be able to link them in with us. So if someone comes into the council today and is looking for integration support, they really don't know where to go. So we want to see that embedded, and I hope that my team will grow, because the work that we have is so much, and I'm hoping that we see a bigger team, because we have a population that is higher than most of the other council areas. So we would like to see a bigger team, and that will be able to help us to be more efficient. And then lastly, I would say I would like to see more, a community that is together, not as divided as we are today in many areas, just a community that is working together for the positive change for all. Because a lot of people that have come in here are creating those conditions to have the conversations, but we want to see it happening in a two-way, that we have those platforms where we have open conversations about integration. We should not shy away from the conversation on integration, but we should be able to sit down and challenge some of the things that we are hearing, and then also be able to bring out the correct information and from the correct sources.
Absolutely. I think that is the absolute perfect note to leave it on. Thank you so much, Reuben, for joining us on What's the Story Dublin and discussing the important work done by you and your team. And yeah, just we appreciate so much that you took out the time to speak with us today. Thank you again.
It was my pleasure, Deirdre. Thank you.
And thanks again to today's guest, Reuben Hambakachere. I'd also like to extend my thanks to our audio engineer and editor, Robert Fay. This podcast was produced by myself, Deirdre Malumbi, and Michael Ryan, and recorded in the Central Library Studio. Be sure to spread the word if you're enjoying What's the Story Dublin, and to like and subscribe for future episodes. Slán go fóill.